Hi, Mehul here with Developer Express. In this video, we're going to take a look at a new feature of the ASPxGridView and Editors library. It's really more for the editors. It's called null text. It's kind of a watermark feature for the editors like the text box and the spin edit. Let's take a look at it. The null text feature has just been added in the latest release of DXperience in the 2009 Volume 1. Null text, if you're now familiar, is kind of like a watermark, and you can see a sample of this on the Ajax website, where let's say you have a text box and you wanted to type in some suggestive text. So here we can see that this gives you a suggestion to type in your first name, and when you click in there to type in your first name, that text disappears and it doesn't show up again if you put in an actual value. Same thing with the last name. So we've implemented this property for 6 of our editors. And these include the ASPX text box, ASPX button edit, date edit, memo, and the spin edit control. So let's take a quick look at how we can implement this property. I've started by creating a blank website, and on the default ASPX page, I'm going to make a little search box. So let's say if we were Google or something, we wanted to enter in a search box with some suggestive text that said enter your search keywords. So we'll start by using the ASPX round panel, and I'll change the header text of the ASPX round panel. And let's say we'll call it something like search.devexpress.com. And in the content area, I'll add a table. Just need 2 columns and 1 row. And on the left-hand side, we'll add a ASPX text box. And we'll make this a little bit longer since search boxes are usually a little bit bigger. And then in the second column, we'll add a button to instantiate the search. So let's just set up the properties of the button, and we'll call this search. Now to set up the null text, the watermark feature, we simply set the ASPX text box's null text property. So we'll put in something like search, enter, search keywords. And this gives a suggestive hint to the user. Now let's take a look at this in action. So here we have our round panel, and the ASPX text box gives us the hint, and as soon as we click in within the box, it's gone, and we can enter in some kind of term of ASPxGridView null text or something like that. And similarly, if we get rid of the text, then we'll get our search hint back. Now one of the things you'll notice is that the hint text is usually in a lighter color like a gray or something like that, and in the first version when we released this, a style property was missing. Now I want to show you that we are going to add this style property in an upcoming release, but I'm going to show you a little workaround you can do so that we can make this gray in the meantime. And it's also kind of an interesting workaround because you can see how we can add some JavaScript and make use of a couple of the client-side properties of the ASPX text box. So let's go back to our solution. The first thing we'll do is we're going to add the JavaScript. So I'm going to add a folder, and we'll call it scripts. Now we could add the JavaScript in the actual page, but sometimes it's more useful to separate the JavaScript out. So now we can add a new item to the scripts folder. Now select the JScript file, and we'll just call it null style. And we're going to add one function to our file here. We're going to add a function called change color, and we're going to pass in one parameter, and we'll call it obj, short for object. And this object will be the text box that we pass in. And I'll create a variable to hold the color property. So I want to check first if the object is focused. Focused being a client-side property of the ASPX text box, or if the object's getValue function is null or not. And if either of those conditions are true, we're going to set the color to black, meaning that we have a value within the box or it has focus. Otherwise, we're going to set the color to gray. And finally, we'll apply this color to the actual style. So we'll call it the getInputElement function, and then call the style property and set its color to our local color variable. And that's it. We're done. Now we simply have to call this change color. So I'll save this. We'll go back to our default ASPX, and let's set up a couple of properties of the ASPX text box before we call that function. The first thing is, because we're going to be calling client-side functions, we want to enable the client-side API. And we're also going to set the fore color to a default of gray. So it'll switch over from gray to black. Now we can go to the client-side events and set the got focus and call the change color property. And we'll pass in S, which stands for sender, which will be the ASPX text box. And we'll call the same function from the lost focus. Now before we can run this, we want to make sure that we reference the file. So be sure to drag in the corresponding JavaScript file that we've created. And now there's a reference pointing to this JavaScript file and the function. Let's save our work and take a look at it. Now we have a very nice ASPX text box with a nice grayed out hint. When we enter in some text, it stays black, and if we remove it, we get our hint back. So as you saw, the null text property is a great way to add like a watermark or a hint property to your text box or spin edit or data edit controls. Thanks for watching.